नमस्कार दोस्तों, आज के एपिसोड का मुख्य विषय है बदलती दुनिया और बदलते चुनौतियों के बीच भारत की विदेश नीति। क्या आज की विश्व व्यवस्था सच में मल्टीपोलर हो चुकी है? क्या भारत अपनी स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी को बनाए रख पाया है? क्या गांधीयन विचार आज भी विश्व शांति के लिए प्रासंगिक है? और इंडो पैसिफिक जैसे नए जियोपॉलिटिकल कंस्ट्रक्ट्स भारत के लिए अवसर है या चुनौती? इन सब गंभीर प्रश्नों पर चर्चा करने के लिए आज हमने लाइफ एक्सप्रेस के वर्चुअल प्लेटफॉर्म पर एक बहुत ही प्रतिष्ठित अतिथि को आमंत्रित किया है, जो न केवल भारत की विदेश नीति पर गहरी पकड़ रखते हैं, बल्कि शिक्षा, शोध और शिक्षा जगत में भी 4 दशकों से अधिक का अनुभव रखते हैं। लेकिन इन सब विषयों पर चर्चा करने से पहले मैं चाहूंगा कि आज के विशेष अतिथि, जो भले ही किसी परिचय या पहचान के मोहताज नहीं हैं, उनका एक संक्षिप्त परिचय प्रस्तुत करूं। हमारे आज के विशेष अतिथि हैं डॉक्टर आर.एस. यादव जी, जो एक प्रसिद्ध शिक्षाविद और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर के पॉलिटिकल साइंटिस्ट हैं। डॉक्टर यादव का जन्म हरियाणा के रेवाड़ी डिस्ट्रिक्ट अंतर्गत कोसली नामक एक छोटे से शहर में हुआ। बचपन से ही अपनी विलक्षण प्रतिभा एवं अपने उत्कृष्ट कार्यों के बदौलत उन्होंने समाज में अपनी एक अलग पहचान बना ली थी। यदि हम उनके शैक्षणिक जीवन पर प्रकाश डालें तो हम पाते हैं कि उन्होंने अपनी प्रारंभिक, माध्यमिक तथा उच्च शिक्षा अव्वल दर्जे से सफलतापूर्वक पूरी की। मोर इम्पोर्टेंटली, he did his PhD from the prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Recipients of several awards, डॉक्टर यादव ने अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर भी भारत का गौरव बढ़ाया है और हांगकांग, कजाकिस्तान, यूनाइटेड किंगडम और पोलैंड जैसे देशों में इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंसेस में भारत का प्रतिनिधित्व भी किया है। In his illustrious career of more than 41 years, Dr. Yadav held several dignified positions, including Vice Chancellor of Baba Masnath University, Rohtak. And to know more about Dr. Yadav and his works, especially on foreign policy, I shall take you straight to him. So please join me in welcoming a great educationist and a renowned political scientist, Dr. R.S. Yadav. Namaskar sir. First of all, we extend our warm welcome and sincere gratitude to you for your gracious presence in Life Express. आपके रिच प्रोफाइल को देखने पर पता चलता है कि आप एक ग्रामीण पृष्ठभूमि से आते हैं, स्पेशली फ्रॉम अ फैमिली ऑफ आर्मी ऑफिसर इन कोसली. The same Kosli which has produced a number of army officers, bureaucrats, scientists, engineers, educationists, and whatnot. And it goes without saying that you yourself achieved the distinction of becoming the first Vice Chancellor from Kosli. तो सबसे पहले ना सिर्फ मैं बल्कि हमारे सभी इंटेलेक्चुअल व्यूअर्स आपसे जानना चाहेंगे कि कैसे हुआ ये सब, क्या हैं आपके सफलता के राज, what are the guiding principles or driving force of your life? जी.
During my whole career from student life till date, 4 fundamental principles have been very keen for my development. These are hard work, perseverance, discipline and focus on the goal. Since the student life, I have been very hardworking, taking care of all the academic activities and lengthy academic discussions and readings whichever is available. And this process has been continuously followed, not only in a gap stop arrangement, rather it was a continuous process. And discipline is also very crucial for anybody's growth and innovation. And finally, you have to be focused on the goal. So I have always been focused on my goal, not just passing the examination, but my target has always been excellence in the discipline. And that is why I have been able to make the progress like this, and any person who want to achieve the heights in the academics, he or she has to follow these four principles. They are crucial and fundamental for anybody's development.
As an expert of foreign affairs, and particularly about India's foreign policy, do you perceive any fundamental shift in country's foreign policy in the post-Cold War years? Yes, over to you.
Yes, this is a very basic question, and it needs to be probed seriously, because a foreign policy is always determined by twofold factors: domestic and external. And when there is a fundamental change in the domestic and external affairs, foreign policy is bound to shift. This has happened in case of India as well. If you look at the post-Cold War India, domestically India has progressed a lot in number of areas. If you took economically, India became the fourth largest economy in the world. If you go to demographically, India is the largest population, having 65% of the youth available as a resource. And if you go technically, then technological and science advancement has been very there, particularly in terms of space and other activities. And also, India became from non-nuclear to the nuclear states. So these are the domestic change that are bound to reflect in its foreign policy. Similarly, the post-Cold War world is very different globally. With the end of the former USSR, the world has become a very fluid kind of situation where non-polarity is there. Still, the process is going on. And along with the end of the Cold War, we are also having globalization as a process for economic development for all the countries. And UN also lost some relevance because it has weakened during these days. NAM movement has also been not so powerful as it used to be. So these changes definitely are reflected in India's post-Cold War foreign policy. And if I give in brief the kind of pattern of change, then you can very well notice. During the Cold War period, we are non-aligned country. Now we are in the process of multi-alignment. In the Cold War period, we were following a defensive foreign policy. Now we are following a very assertive foreign policy. Earlier, we were non-nuclear states. Now we are nuclear status states. Earlier, our foreign policy was based on idealism. Now it is a pragmatism. Earlier, our focus was on third worldism. Now it is focused on global south. Earlier, we were following a protectionist economic model. Now we are following the LPG under the grab of globalization. Earlier, we are having friendship and cooperation treaty. Now these are replaced by strategic partnership. And finally, earlier we are believing in mostly peaceful coexistence, but now we are believing in balancing act by our foreign policy. So these are the major shift we can notice how we traveled from the Cold War period to the post-Cold War, and that has reflected in India's moving after 1991.
मूविंग फर्दर, जैसा हमें ज्ञात है कि आपने कोल्ड वॉर से लेकर आज के इंडो पैसिफिक काल तक भारत की विदेश नीति को देखते आ रहे हैं। आपके विचार में क्या भारत आज वास्तव में स्ट्रैटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी हासिल कर चुका है, या फिर हम सिर्फ अपनी प्रायोरिटीज को रीअलाइन कर रहे हैं? जी, क्या कहेंगे इसको लेकर आप?
In this context, we can visualize that partially we have been able to attain the strategic autonomy, and partially we are making efforts in that direction. If you look at the Cold War period, then it was easy because stabilization was there because of the bipolar world. And we were able to manage our strategic autonomy through the non-aligned movement, for which India was one of the leaders. And with the help of the Soviet Union also we managed. But post-Cold War is a different world. In this world, we are also trying, to some extent we have been successful, because India is balancing between the two groups. One is towards the USA and other is toward USSR and China, the Russia and China. If you look at the American side, we have 10 years defense agreement in 2005, 2015 and 2025. These have brought closer towards US. Secondly, we have also at operational level signed 4 agreements, 202, 2016, 2018 and 2020 BECA agreement. These also made India an informal ally of the USA. And through the civil nuclear deal of 2005, we have come closer to the USA. So that was one part. On the other side, India is also participating in RIC, Russia, India, China group, BRICS, SCO. All these efforts are made to making a balance between the two. So through this process, India has to some extent maintained the strategic autonomy. But it has not been fully successful, not because that India's foreign policy has been a failure, rather because world is changing so fast and number of developments in the world, particularly the fluid nature of the world order we are having and various problems of warfare going on West Asia, Ukraine and others. And recently the Trump's tariff regime and the donor doctrine which he has recently followed in the wake of Venezuela case. So in that sense, India is also making efforts and the situation demands that India has to be more initiative taking and more innovative how to balance, but the process is going on. So partially we had been successful and partially we are making efforts in this direction.
यहाँ मैं थोड़ा आपको रोकना चाहूँगा। इंडो पैसिफिक भारत की विदेश नीति का एक सेंट्रल पिलर बन चुका है। क्या आप मानते हैं कि ये स्ट्रैटेजी भारत के लिए लॉन्ग टर्म एडवांटेज है या इसमें स्ट्रैटेजिक ओवरस्ट्रेच का रिस्क भी छुपा हुआ है? जी।
Partially it is correct and partially one has to look beyond. Partially correct in the sense because after the end of the Cold War, shift of international politics has been there from the Euro-Atlantic to Asia-Pacific. So Asia-Pacific became very important in the term because of the economic development of ASEAN and other countries. So India's follow a look east policy to attach itself with all these ASEAN states. But at the same time, to make a balance with China, because the Chinese exertion are there in the China South Pacific Sea. That is why India joined the Quad with the US, Japan, Australia, and in that sense, Indo-Pacific become very important. But at the same time, India cannot go beyond a limit. At the same time, India is also exploring other initiatives in West Asia and in the Central Asian states through Shanghai cooperation. So partially it is there, but it cannot remain the sole. Rather, it has been one of the pillar of India's foreign policy at the present moment.
Well, आप गांधीयन थॉट्स और इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस दोनों पर लिखते आ रहे हैं। आज के पावर सेंट्रिक और सिक्योरिटी ड्रिवन वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर में क्या गांधीयन नॉन वायलेंस और मोरल पॉलिटिक्स प्रैक्टिकली रेलिवेंट या प्रासंगिक है?
It seems sometimes that Gandhian ideas are utopian and may not be relevant at the present context. But basically you go into depth and you find for long-term vision for the world, there is still need of Gandhian policies of non-violence and peace. If you look at the historical perspective, that after both the World War I and World War II, always efforts has been made for a peace. After First World War, the League of Nations was established. After the Second World War, UN has been established. So definitely any kind of war scenario doesn't lead to the development of humanity. So peace is prerequisite for the growth of human beings throughout the world. And in this context, if I remind you an example, a few years back, India hosted a 150th year celebration of Satyagraha of Gandhi and invited top leaders from the world. Then Les Walesa, he was a leader of Poland Solidarity Group, gave an interview to the Hindu. In that he said that when we fought with violence, we lost. But when we fought with the non-violence, we win. So that is the crux of Gandhi. And if you go beyond that also, then you find Gandhian ethos are imbibed in number of ways. If you look at the SDG goals, Sustainable Development Goals, they can be achieved only through the precepts of Gandhi. If you look at the environmental issue, if you look at the disarmament issue, if you look at the other humanitarian face of the globalization, then definitely Gandhi becomes relevant. So unless you want a very peaceful world for all the humanity to develop, you cannot discard Gandhi. So in short term, it may be looking that power centric can gain to some extent, but ultimate gain will be the peace, and that can be restored through the non-violence. And that is why UN has adopted non-violence as a creed for its adoption.
Very thoughtful of you. And next, I have a question which is pertinent to your profession. आप वाइस चांसलर जैसे महत्वपूर्ण एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव पद पर भी रह चुके हैं। आज के समय में यूनिवर्सिटीज़ पर बढ़ते पॉलिटिकल और रेगुलेटरी प्रेशर्स के बीच एकेडमिक फ्रीडम, जैसा मुझे लग रहा है, वो थोड़ा कंप्रोमाइज्ड हो रहा है, जो कि ठीक बात नहीं है। क्या कहेंगे इसको लेकर आप? जी।
It is very true. You are right that we are having some kind of compromises and compulsion in the academic autonomy in the university in particular and other education fora in general. If you take the university, 3-4 things have become antithesis to the growth of the university. One is centralization of all the regulatory bodies. That India is having a diversity of culture, diversities of system, diversities of education models, and if you centralize all that, then definitely the efficiency will suffer. Second thing, we find that on the name of uniformity, you are restricting the innovation and unique culture of every university or any institution. And third and most important is bureaucratization. It is heavily bureaucratized. Now the government departments have become so harsh with the university administration that for everything they need that even academic issues to be finalized by the bureaucratic setup. And finally, the financial burden, because now the government is considering, whatever the government that be, considering it is a financial burden. That is why in some cases they are extended not the grants to the university but loan. So how can you give loan for a sector which need investment? Health and education is the investing sector for making human beings. So in that way, universities become very dependent financially on the government grants. And finally, we have also the committed vice chancellors. Like committed bureaucracy we are talking about, they are committed not to the education, not to the students, not to the society, rather committed to particular ideological group or government that be whatsoever. So if that kind of scenario comes, I definitely feel that a lot of pressure has come, and university autonomy, which used to be there earlier when we used to be student of the university, now the vice chancellor or administrator cannot finalize everything, whereas earlier this was the domain of the educationists, that they could finalize the curriculum, the academic profile, and whatever the activities run in the field. Definitely these days we are, for the last 2, 3, 4 decades, we are finding some crunch on the administrative and the setup of the university. So definitely autonomy is being compromised to some extent.
Well, my next question is, political science के क्षेत्र में 4 दशकों के अनुभव के बाद आपके अनुसार भारतीय पॉलिटिकल साइंस की सबसे बड़ी कमी क्या रही है? जब बात डेमोक्रेसी, लीडरशिप और पब्लिक डिस्कोर्स जैसे समस्याओं को समझने की आती है। जी।
As far as the discipline of political science is concerned, there is not much weakness we find in that. The issues you have raised are very pertinent, but basically only smaller problems are there in case of the development in India, that we have less theorization on the topics which you have defined. But otherwise, this is not the weakness of political science, rather the extraneous factor which is difficult to comprehend, in the sense there is a rise of democratic authoritarianism. Democratic authoritarianism means that leaders are elected democratically, become authoritarian, and this phenomena has become global. every leader wants to continue for life, whether in Russia, whether in China, whether in other part of the globe. So most of this problem has created a problem for the working of democracy. Other is the rising populism, that government that be always feeling for electoral gains, and this populism, what is called freebies and others, that has hampered. And thirdly, the lack of democratic culture. We have electoral democracy, successful electoral democracy, but the democratic culture of coexistence is missing these days. And finally, we are living in a de-idealized world. And in this de-idealized world, market forces are more predominant rather than the value systems or ethics. And that is why these phenomena led to different type of outputs in the form of political corruption, non-ethical development, and also you can say the defection type of politics. So that is why it becomes very difficult for political scientists to comprehend the result in a very scientific manner. Otherwise, this is not the problem with the discipline, rather the problem of the changes that has taken place, which has become non-ethical and others, that has hampered the growth of political science in this direction.
Well, finally, I would like to request you, like all our guests, to forward a message of peace for the society so that we could create a better human, a better society, a better nation, a better world for a better tomorrow.
Basically, peace is the very prerequisite for the human development in the country and at the globe level. And in that context, Gandhian values still hold relevance, that we should follow the non-violence path, we should follow the peaceful coexistence and the humanitarian values, because without the sustainable development, without the growth of all the people, we cannot handle because the problem of today's world are collective wisdom problem. Like you have environmental issue, climate issue, you have the problems of non-traditional threats like terrorism, cybercrime, drug trafficking. All these demand collective efforts. So a collective wisdom of the political elites is required, and that collective wisdom can be attained only through the enlightened national interest followed by them. Not only the national interest of their country, rather the enlightened national interest for the sake of humanity. If that is followed, then the real peace in the world can be there and society can live with a harmonious way.
Well, so sir, we are immensely grateful to you for your scholarly presence with us today. मन नहीं कर रहा है कि मैं इस बातचीत को समाप्त करूं. आपसे जितनी बात करूं उतनी बातें करने का और भी मन करता है, लेकिन समय की चूंकि मर्यादा है, इसलिए हमें इस सत्र की समाप्ति करनी होगी. और आज आपने जो भी बातें कही हैं, मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि आपकी सारी बातें आज की युवा पीढ़ी के लिए प्रेरणादायी साबित होगी और वे इससे जरूर लाभान्वित होंगे और इस पर अमल भी करेंगे. और शिक्षा जगत में आपके उत्कृष्ट और सराहनीय कार्यों के लिए लाइफ एक्सप्रेस की जूरी ने आपके लिए एक अवार्ड की घोषणा की है, और वो अवार्ड है लाइफ एक्सप्रेस आइकन ऑफ इंडिया अवार्ड. और आपके इस उपलब्धि पर मैं आपको अपने इंटेलेक्चुअल व्यूअर्स की ओर से ढेरों बधाई देता हूँ. हार्टिएस्ट कंग्रेचुलेशंस. गॉड विलिंग, we shall meet again in some other academic forum. Thank you for connecting with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you also, and I'm thankful for the Life Express that they have given me opportunity to share my thoughts with the public in general. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
LXP Icon of India Award is proudly presented to Dr. R.S. Yadav for his exemplary contributions to Indian academia on 23rd January 2026.
आज के सत्र की समाप्ति मैं फिर एक आह्वान के साथ करूंगा, खासकर डॉक्टर आर.एस. यादव जी की बातचीत से निकले कुछ मुख्य अंश को लेकर. सबसे पहले डॉक्टर यादव ने अपने करियर के 4 मूलभूत सिद्धांतों पर प्रकाश डाला, जो हैं कड़ी मेहनत, दृढ़ता, अनुशासन और लक्ष्य पर ध्यान केंद्रित करना. आगे उन्होंने बताया कि भारत की विदेश नीति में शीत युद्ध के बाद के वर्षों में महत्वपूर्ण बदलाव आए हैं, जो घरेलू और बाहरी दोनों कारकों से प्रभावित हैं. आगे उन्होंने इस बात पर भी बल दिया कि गांधीवादी अहिंसा और नैतिक राजनीति आज के शक्ति केंद्रित विश्व में भी प्रासंगिक है, क्योंकि शांति मानव विकास के लिए आवश्यक है। उन्होंने यह भी माना कि विश्वविद्यालयों में शैक्षणिक स्वतंत्रता पर बढ़ते राजनीतिक और नियामक दबाव के कारण शिक्षा की गुणवत्ता से समझौता हो रहा है, जिसका मुख्य कारण केंद्रीकरण, एकरूपता, नौकरशाहीकरण और वित्तीय बोझ है। भारतीय राजनीति विज्ञान की सबसे बड़ी कमी लोकतांत्रिक अधिनायकवाद, बढ़ते लोक लुभावनवाद, लोकतांत्रिक संस्कृति की कमी और एक डी आइडियलाइज्ड दुनिया में रहने के कारण उत्पन्न होने वाली चुनौतियों को समझने में है। उनकी बातों ने हमें यह समझाया कि बदलती हुई विश्व व्यवस्था में भारत को अपनी सोच, दिशा और मूल्यों पर दृढ़ रहना होगा। विद दोज डिलिब्रेशंस ऑफ डॉक्टर आर.एस. यादव जी, वी क्लोज दिस एपिसोड और मिलते हैं अगले एपिसोड में समाज के एक और रोल मॉडल के साथ। टिल देन, एंजॉय योर टाइम मीनिंगफुली, और हाँ, अपना और अपनों का भी ख्याल रखें। जय हिंद।